We are reviewing No Time to Die, the brand new, long awaited, and even longer delayed James Bond movie. This is the final entry in the Daniel Craig saga, which 15 years, 15 years, five movies. Casino Royale back in 2006, Quantum of Solace, excuse me, back in 2008, I believe. Then you had Skyfall in 2012, you had Spectre in 2015, and now you got No Time to Die in what should have been 2020, instead 2021.
I mean, this movie wasn't even supposed to come out in 2019, but like Craig got injured on set, and there was like a bunch of other delays with it too. So this movie's
Yeah,
been
that's
like
right.
floating around for the longest time to be finished.
That was 180 news cycles ago. I completely forgot. Yeah, this
Yeah.
was supposed to come out like Thanksgiving 2019, wasn't it?
Yep.
So
So
much
yeah,
time to die.
yeah, a lot of time to die. And the movie's 2 hours and 43 minutes. A lot of time to call the corner on this one. No Time to Die. Now, I'm going to turn it over really because I did see it, but I do not have many big opinions on it, almost by reason of default. Number two, I didn't write a written review of this on my website. And number three, I was overruled by the committee over here, the underpaid committee that's threatening a strike, mind you. I was overruled in terms of reviewing No Time to Die. I am talking to two way bigger Bond fans than myself who have more expertise on this. It takes a critic. I'm not going to lie. It takes a critic of great stature and great humility to venture out and drive 160 miles round trip to go watch God's Not Dead, We the People on a Monday evening when he has to work at 4:30 in the morning the following morning. That being said, it also takes great humility for a critic to understand where his opinion is should not be regarded with a lot of esteem given prior ignorance. As far as the Daniel Craig movies go, I've only seen Skyfall in addition to No Time to Die. So again, I do not have the full context outside of what I've read of the series. And on top of that, I've only seen, I think, four Bond movies that I can name. So I am not A, the biggest fan of this series, B, the biggest loyalist. I'm talking to a man right here who makes Sleepless possible every week, who has seen every Bond movie and called it in the green room his favorite film franchise.
Yeah.
And on top of Dominic too, who is more versed in this franchise than me, I'd rather turn it over to you two. I can chime in and interject my opinions here and there, but I'm honestly more interested, truthfully, outside of whatever opinions I offer, is just I'm more interested in what you two have to say. So you know what? We'll go with the expert to start the show. Joe, what say you about No Time to Die?
All right. I want to give a little context here to why this film was actually made in the first place, because originally the previous film, Spectre, was actually supposed to be Craig's final outing as Bond. But if you saw Spectre, you're probably saying to yourself, "Well, that sucked for a finale." Spectre, it's not a bad film. It's just a very disappointing one to really end this run of Daniel Craig films on. When like Craig actually took it, not himself, but his version of the character and the writers and directors and everybody else who was associated with this era of Bond, they were taken in a different direction, with Casino Royale being more of a grounded take with Bond. No gadgets. It's really just him being a spy and playing poker and just really trying to get information out of the villain in that movie. Even the villain's not like, the villain doesn't really have henchmen in that movie. It's really just him, played by Lashif, who is played by, oh my god,
I know. I don't know, but I know you're talking about Mads Mikkelsen.
Mads
Mads
Mikkelsen,
Mikkelsen.
yes, Mads Mikkelsen. To where like each film after that, even Quantum of Solace, which to me is the worst one of his films, because oddly enough, that came out in 2008, 2009 when that writer's strike happened, and we left it up to a bunch of idiots to write that movie where it was just action scene after action scene after action scene with nothing we love about Bond following it. But Skyfall, which to me is another great one, and that came out on the 25th anniversary of James Bond, and it was like so good there as well. And you started getting back into some of the flavors that we like about James Bond. You had a little bit of gadgets here, you had the villain with henchmen and everything, and we thought Spectre would be a great way to close it out, but it wasn't. So Daniel Craig, even though he hates playing this character at this point, he was like, I'll come back for one last ride, but that is it. This is my last one. And I can't speak, of course, for Steve or Dom, but to me, this is this is the best conclusion we could have hoped for with this character, I think.
Yeah.
This to me, for the first hour and 30 minutes, this had the potential to me to be my favorite Bond film of all time. I know that's pretty big to say.
And you've seen every single one.
I've seen every single one. I know you're gonna have some like dude who was born in the 70s or 80s probably find us on YouTube and be like, these fucking kids don't know what they're talking about. You know, like Goldfinger is where it's at and everything. I'm not kidding you. The first hour and 30 minutes it became my favorite Bond film. And the reason being is because this film takes heavy inspiration from what is probably my second or third favorite Bond movie, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which if you've seen this one came out between two Sean Connery films because he decided to retire the character because he didn't like playing him anymore, and George Lazenby decided to come in and step into the role only for one time. Oop, I clicked on something. I was supposed to keep it full screen there, my bad. But he was supposed to play the character from here on out, but he only came and played James Bond once and left. This film is a really different look at James Bond, where he's more emotional, he's much more vulnerable, and because he actually falls in love in this movie, legit in love. He's not there to, you know, have sex with like pussy galore and then like call it a day, and other very appropriate like, you know, names for women throughout these movies. He actually falls in love with a woman in this movie, actually marries her, and I don't want to ruin what happens at the end of that movie, but if you've seen it, you know it's a tragic ending, actually, to Bond that is actually really emotional. It did stuff we didn't see typically with those first three James Bond films from Sean Connery, and it was a breath of fresh air. And No Time to Die actually tries to follow those same footsteps, especially in that first hour and 30 minutes. There is so much in this movie that they were like, no, we're going to change it up, actually. Like, you know, we're going to pay heavy homage to that film as well. Throughout this film, you actually hear On Her Majesty's Secret Service's soundtrack intermixed with the new soundtrack for No Time to Die by Billie Eilish, as well as the classic Bond theme. And throughout the movie, you see why it's intermixed here. Bond, I'm going to say this right now, it's going to make some Bond fans unhappy, but don't be expecting Bond to go into this movie and having sex with tons of women like he usually does. This is the present day. Bond, you cannot go up to women, just touch them, and have sex with them whenever you want.
Can I say one that's actually legitimate progress?
Yeah,
two, like sensibilities have changed, and like
exactly.
You can't do that. Like literally, the Bond films came out during the swinging '60s, man. Like Austin Powers definitely made fun of that, where it's like, yeah, I'm just screwing chicks willy nilly, but like, yeah, it's really overall. The Bond that we have built up for this is a generation's Bond right here, Daniel Craig, without a doubt. Kids have grown up knowing only Daniel Craig as James Bond. It really is the end of an era, and I think a beautiful thing they have done overall with this whole string of Craig films since 2006
is having continuity.
Not just the continuity. What's more important, I mean, you're right, absolutely. The continuity serves the larger accomplishment here, which is that you have emotional depth, like long-standing ties and emotional depth that aren't like just fun. Which, don't get me wrong, the other films, they're fun.
Yeah.
Right. I need to like really do my homework on James Bond. I've seen smatterings of the Connery ones here and there, and actually also technically my first Bond was before Craig. He's Irish.
Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan. Thank you.
Pierce
Yes.
Brosnan.
Yeah, those were fun.
I was going to chime in earlier when Joe said this might be his favorite Bond movie. I was going to say even better than Die Another Day.
Oh man, that's pretty easy to accomplish nowadays.
Yeah, but you can't like. Not that you can't. Let me say that you can't. Honestly, with the new series, I'm very curious, like where they take Bond from here. We'll discuss that later, but it'll be interesting. But with this Bond, it felt right, where it's like, yeah, let's take a break from Bond screwing a billion chicks in a single film. I don't know if he did that or not, but like it feels more believable, right? Like literally, you don't have an agent in pussy or a person in pussy galore.
Did you see Spectre at any? Did you see Spectre?
Yeah, I've seen all the Craig films.
Okay,
yes.
like even that last one, like, because the one thing I didn't like about Spectre is they tried to go back to the classic era Bond too much, which was him sexualizing women. Where like the sex scenes that happen in that movie are really uncomfortable. Where he has sex with a woman the night of her husband's funeral, like literally the night she gets home from her husband's funeral, he has sex with her, and the other woman that, like,
she was sad.
The other woman played by Lea Seydoux, Madeline, where like in that movie you really didn't buy them at all. Here it's done a little bit better since you're actually given more time. But in that previous film, it's just like literally they get into an action scene, they almost nearly die, and he's just like, what should we do now? And it's like it literally cuts to them like making out in the room about to have sex and everything. It's like, and it plays the most cheesiest music. It's like, it's just not right anymore. I'm not saying James Bond can't have sex in these movies anymore, but it's just like, you got to do it correctly. And one thing I loved about this movie is when he meets with Ana de Armas, who's part of the CIA in Cuba.
Great moment.
Great moment.
Sequence.
Yeah, great whole.
I love that
whole
sequence.
sequence.
Scene.
That was my favorite action scene in the whole movie, but just the build up, everything throughout it. It reminds me of why I love James Bond so much. Like wearing the tux, going into secret organizations, the weird gadgets.
That was more classic Bond than the train scene in Spectre, where they were straight because in Spectre they were straight up like, yeah, I've got a white tux. She's in a dress for some reason, and I'm fighting Batista who's like the big buff dude on a train while it's like 1940s sparkling everywhere. I was like, and okay, cool, but
we'll have sex at the end of the scene. See, classic Bond. It's like, no, that's not it. Like, this is the look, this is the flavor I wanted. Ana de Armas, she's a very beautiful looking woman and everything. I don't need to see Bond have like anything with her. It's fine. And my favorite thing about this scene is how they actually how she exits the film between her and Bond. It's literally like they share a drink. He says ciao, shakes her hand, and says, "You know what? You did good today. You should be proud as a CIA agent." And then like she like thanks him, and they go on their way. I was like, did I actually just see Bond do that? That is the most refreshing thing I've seen in 24 films. Like, what? That blew my mind.
He has learned discipline.
He has.
Mutual respect for peers. We love to see it.
Like,
not all men. Not all men.
Like, it's so great to see them actually like not only do this with the character, but the fear I had when I heard that they were gonna like kind of like make a Bond film that's aware of its Me Too era was like they were just gonna like half-ass it that we've seen with some movies. Where like it's just like, hey, look, we have the strong female character, and Bond won't like make out with her and anything. It's like the way it's done here, it feels much more real. It feels like actual characters interacting, and that especially in that sequence there, and in the other character as well, Nomi, played by Lashana Lynch, who like to me, anytime her and Bond are on film, I mean on screen, they have such great rapport with one another. The way they're just like kicking at each other, busting each other, trying to one up each other, and eventually like learning to appreciate how she is the new 007, because if you remember at the end of Spectre, he retires and leaves MI6 for like the 20th time of his career. Like, she then takes up the mantle of 007 and everything, and like the way they just try to one up each other, that was like one of my other favorite moments in the film too. And just having actual women be 00s now. We've had Bond women who like they've been badasses and everything, but like going to this extent, having the gadgets, being on the same playing field as Bond, that was so cool to see finally actually be done. And the way they do it, like a cat and mouse game too, where it's like, especially in the action sequence I was talking about in Cuba, where both of them are after the same target. One's after Craig is working with the CIA during this point, and Lashana Lynch is working for MI6, and they're just trying to like capture the same target, and depending on who gets it, of course, is going to benefit whatever organization they work for. It's like watching like Tom and Jerry, or Spy versus Spy, I should actually say. It was so cool. It was like, wow, man, like this, again, a refreshing thing is like Bond actually like not fighting against another spy, but like trying to one up race against another spy in these films. Let alone a woman too, who gives him blue balls at the beginning of this movie too, which I thought was hilarious.
I thought that was great. I'm like, okay, sure, he's gonna bang a black woman so that he could say that it was like, see, no. I'm glad that they went the route that they did.
I have two friends and co-hosts that know Bond way better than myself. So I let them take the reins on this. What I will say, though, having seen Skyfall, the only other movie I've seen of the Daniel Craig series, what I will say is that I remember, and I have my two closest friends are also big Bond fans. So clearly I'm in the wrong. I'm very much in the minority over here. Two of my other closest friends are very into Bond. And I remember we hung out after they saw Spectre that evening. And coincidentally, this weekend, we're hanging out after they go see No Time to Die on Saturday. But we hung out after they saw Spectre. And they talked about it for like 20 minutes amongst themselves. And I remember them expressing real disappointment, especially coming, 3 years after Skyfall was released. And Skyfall, really, I feel like Skyfall reinvigorated Bond as a whole.
It did.
Because even Quantum of Solace, doing my research before the show, Quantum of Solace made significantly less money than Casino Royale just 2 years later. And it was like Bond was at a crossroads at a time in 2008 where it was if you think back to 2008 when it came out, you had Marvel start to gain traction. You started to see the landscape of movies change.
Yeah.
And where Skyfall, how I remember it, I haven't seen it since it came out. How I remember Skyfall was almost starting to reimagine the Bond archetype in a lot of different ways, and to be a more modern, less maybe chauvinistic caricature that he was for so many years, going back to Sean Connery, Roger Moore, and even before. Then you saw Spectre, which I didn't see. I only know of Spectre based on the reviews I've read and the people that I've talked to who've seen it, full disclosure. How I understand it, and you two can call me out or back me up, whatever you want to do. How I understand it is that Spectre almost tried to retcon, for lack of a better term, and tried to go back and backpedal to what Bond was, so as not to lose the core fan base of the people who have grown up with Bond. They tried to retcon it insofar, not only narratively, but also just in terms of reinvigorating the cliches of the maybe womanizing, chauvinistic caricature that we're so
which
used
backfired
to through all decades, and people did not respond to it. And this was not a case of critics being less positive to it than audiences. This was a case of critics calling it out and audience members being like, yeah, this was not as good, not nearly as good as Skyfall, and more significantly, rather, did not set the tone for what Skyfall did. It did not carry the torch in the way Skyfall did, which was even weirder given that Sam Mendes directed it. Now, No Time to Die, finally, and I'll finish with this. No Time to Die, how I can discern it, seems to at least try to restore the foundation that Skyfall helped build, and also fittingly send off Daniel Craig. And many people, and even partly myself included, even though I didn't see Spectre, kind of felt Daniel Craig's final act should have been Skyfall. With that, I throw it over to Joe.
No, absolutely. I always said, like, if Spectre was honestly the last movie we were going to get from Daniel Craig, I was like, I wish I wish Skyfall was actually the way he went out, because I'd be like, well, at least, like, the character goes out and we're introduced to, like, M's now back to being, like, a guy. Judi Dench retired the character, which, that was a great send-off for her. Like, Skyfall to me is really M's, like, send-off of a movie, or Judi Dench's, like, era of playing that character, which is
it doesn't even have to be a happy ending.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
I mean, like, it's just a closure.
Like, and with Spectre, it's like to, when they were like, oh, we're trying to go back into, like, pay, like, the old fans, they'll love this one. My dad grew up watching the Sean Connery ones. Sean Connery has been his favorite James Bond up until Craig, up until Skyfall. Skyfall is the one that made him go, I actually like Craig more, I think more than Connery. And I was actually shocked he said that after we saw the movie. With No Time to Die, the last thing I'll make, and then we can go into negatives with the movie, because I do have a few negatives, unfortunately, is that this, to me, is my favorite performance from Craig out of all these movies. And it's because, like, yeah, he is a much more vulnerable person here, very much in respect to what was one of my favorite James Bond films, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where he is scared at times. He is, like, emotionally angry, and he is, like, heartbroken at moments. And it's just like, to see that be done with Bond it's so refreshing because even with Craig, as much as I love him as Bond, and he is possibly my favorite as well, the whole thing of him being like, very cold and everything, like, and very few times he'll show like emotion like he does in Skyfall. As much as I loved it in Casino Royale and in Skyfall, by the end of Skyfall, I was like, all right, well, I mean, like, can he at least like sometimes be like a human? Because it's like everything else is being so grounded and everything. It's like I feel like this character is lacking here. And Inspector is what really showed what happens when everybody else is being more of like a real human being in the Bond setting, but Bond isn't. Where this now, it's like, okay, we're gonna make Bond actually feel human throughout this, where he actually expresses emotions other than like one-liners and wants to have sex with women. I really enjoyed what Craig did here. I think it's his best performance as Bond because of those reasons, because it very much follows what On Her Majesty's Secret Service did. Dom, do you have anything you want to add on?
Yeah, for me, it's just that they are doing so much work in closing out and building up Bond and his relationships with his friends. You don't get a lot of time really building up his enemies. There are actually there's two enemies. There's two main bad guys here.
There's three,
the actual enemy.
Technical.
Oh, sure. But it's like, honestly, Rami Malek gets the short end of the stick for a couple reasons. First is not his fault, but like, it's like, dude, you're doing that thing where I can't understand what the hell you're saying. Yep. Like, I get it. Like, you're evil. Like, just talk. But the other thing is that, yeah, he got screwed over, or the character got screwed over because, dude, Christoph Waltz as Blofeld is like the most obvious casting choice. Like, it's the most perfect casting choice ever, right? He was just born to play that role. So every time he does it, it's just too good, And it's like, even that send-off was kind of disappointing because it's like, oh, okay, cool. That's what you did with him. Sure. Yeah. But like, as he's coming down the hallway and you have the occasional light coming through him, it's like, this is epic. I feel bad that Rami Malek isn't going to get to do anything. And we're already like an hour and a half in or something.
To me, the movie, like, because the thing with Spectre too is like, I felt like Blofeld was wasted there. And I hate to say it, but he's also wasted here. Where it's just like, I rather you guys like, because not only is there two villains, then you have like a secret villain, and then you have like the main henchman that Bond's got to fight. It's just like, okay, guys, like, look, I understand this movie's 2 hours and 50 minutes, but you're doing a great job closing out Bond and all of his allies. His enemies are getting no work at all.
What, from a production standpoint, just make Blofeld the main villain again, because you messed up, exactly. I guess, apparently in the last one. You kind of did, yeah. I'm like mixed on it, but really just how you handled it. It's like, okay, sure, because he lived in Spectre, and it's like, okay, you're saving him for something else, and then you don't do anything with him and kill him off. Spoiler, but like, you really just wasted it. And it's like, you could have saved Rami Malek for the new James Bond. It's like, now like a great actor is wasted without doing anything, and it's like, what a waste. Again, that's all logistics, but it really does show. And that was honestly the most glaring thing for me. Yeah, no, everything else was honestly hitting on good fronts.
I'll say this: levels. Like, once Blofeld's reintroduced into the film and we start meeting Rami Malek, it's not that the film like it goes down for me or anything, but I did catch myself checking my watch more often than not when their scenes were happening, because like, sure. Maybe not Blofeld so much, because I was like, oh, maybe they'll actually do something here with him. And actually the interrogation scene he has with Bond, I think was actually pretty good. But especially with Rami Malek. It was
good, but it didn't mean anything.
It didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Absolutely. I was just like, all right, well, by the end of the movie, I'm like, there was no point to that scene. And like, we could have cut it out and trimmed the runtime, because unfortunately, like, we've all made this joke on Twitter. We've all seen it. But, the film is really long, so there's plenty of time to die. And I do feel like that's also its other weakness, is that it's closing out as much as possible, that like it goes on a bit too long in some cases. And with like, the character of Blofeld, as well as Rami Malek's character, who is Lucifer Safin or whatever his name is. I could never understand it when he said it. To me, that character was like, okay, well, this is, I don't really care at this point. Like, I'd be checking my watch when his scenes were on, where he was like trying to explain.
he's the Spider-Man 3 Venom of the movie.
He really is. I mean, when he comes on screen, it's just like, what's your motivation? Oh, I want to just kill everybody because just cuz. It's just like, damn, it really sucks when we had like, we had Javier Bardem, who like I thought had a really cool motivation, where like he was an ex-MIA agent, MI6 agent who was left behind and left to die, but like his failed pill kept him alive and burnt his mouth, and no one came to save him, and they knew he was alive. Or Lashif, who was just literally a guy just wanting to like do arms trading, just getting caught up in the wrong crowd, both with other like Somalian pirates and stuff he had to fight, as well as Bond himself that he got caught up with. It was just like, wow, like the one thing about the Craig era of films is like those two villains were like, hey, this is actually like these are great Bond villains. That's a lot of people would say are some of their favorites. Like the take that they did with Mads Mikkelsen being more grounded, and Javier Bardem being more of the traditional Bond villain with the henchmen, the secret island, and everything. But how grounded they even played that to an extent. It really sucks that like with Blofeld we didn't get the potential that we could have, and with Rami Malek, who is a fantastic actor, the guy just gets shafted basically until the third act, where like. That's actually when Bond and him finally meet, is in the last like 20 minutes of this movie. And to me, it's like when Bond and Bond villains don't meet till then, you don't really have that like great Bond villain that you've been looking for, because like you got to have that rapport with these two characters. How many times have we seen Bond meet the villain? The villain's just like, oh, what's your name? Bond, James Bond. And like then they have rapport. Then Bond's in the death trap. Then he escapes. Then they chase each other. And then they have the final showdown. Like, you didn't get that here. And yeah, did I want that? No. But I would have loved to see Rami Malek at least meet James Bond before the final like battle of the movie.
Yeah. Let's close it out here. And I'll start with it. This was more than a competent film. This was a very entertaining film.
Yeah.
This was action with a capital A, and I'm very glad that Daniel Craig gets his send off. Honestly, there's a sequence in the very opening scene where the camera, it's good film work. That's when I started trusting this movie, is when Bond looks behind him. You hear a motorcycle in the distance. The camera pans over. The motorcycle is coming up, but then Bond comes out of frame and tackles the dude off of the bicycle of the motorcycle.
Sick. The cinematography in this movie is amazing. Yeah,
like that camera trick, that bait and switch with the camera you just did there. Very simple. Okay, I trust you. You take me on a ride, and it did. So 3 out of 4 stars. Awesome stuff. Yeah, I wish we could have gotten more on the villain, but everything else was firing in on good cylinders here.
Steve, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I'm not going to give a rating here, so okay. All you, Joe.
All right. Yeah, for me, I mean, this year especially that, cinema has been reopening. The action blockbuster to me has been lacking a bit this year. I wasn't that impressed with Black Widow. I mean, I know you guys gave it 3 stars. To me, it was about like 2.5, maybe even 2 stars for me. I did like Shang-Chi, didn't love it like everybody else did. Jungle Cruise I liked. And, like there's just been other ones that I've been kind of like, this is kind of a downer, like, and disappointment for me as a fan of these franchises. Like the Fast 9, like, that was a disappointment. We even running out a whole theater for that is what really made that like as entertaining as it did for me.
That's the only reason I still remember that movie.
Do you remember me dressing up as Dominic Toretto and just making fun out of the movie?
Never forget.
And then the Suicide Squad, which was my most anticipated comic book movie, and like when it came out, as much as I did enjoy it, I was just kind of like like there is just something lacking here for some reason for me. I don't know what it is. So I was just kind of like, King man, Shark. I guess I love King Shark though. True. To me though, No Time to Die, and it could be like, I don't know if it's because I have my not nostalgia goggles on, but my fan goggles on about Bond. But like this by far is my favorite blockbuster of the year when it comes to action films in general. I had a blast with this. It's made so well. It's done perfectly, I think, to send this era of Bond off. And the way it ends too, I mean, like, just like, I can't imagine. My dad hasn't seen the movie yet. I'm gonna go see it again with him, and I can't wait to see his reaction to how this movie ends, because like it does something you haven't ever seen in a Bond movie before. The way they end this movie, for me, this movie, I absolutely loved it. It could have been like my favorite Bond film, but now it's like my top 10 favorite Bond films of all time. But this is probably going to be on my top 10 best of the year when we get to, like, January or February when we start compiling our lists. I know, like, I might be a fanboy here and everything, but for me, it was 3.5 out of 4 stars. I absolutely loved this film. I had a great time.